All right, welcome back everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to complete Excel assignment 2, which is actually our first Excel assignment because we canceled the first one. If you remember, we canceled that so that I could give you some more time to focus on exam 1, study for that. But now I wanted to give you an opportunity to make a few bonus points. And we've got about a week and a half until the final exam. So you've got a little bit of time to cover the last 4 chapters, get those discussions and quizzes done, and this will give you an opportunity, an opportunity to make a few bonus points as well. So this assignment is going to be talking about developing a pay structure. You'll be able to find this PDF file that I'm showing on the left-hand side. You'll be able to find this PDF file under your Files tab, and you will create your own Excel document like I'm showing to the right. So in Chapter 11, we talk about compensation. We talk about doing job evaluations and assigning points to different jobs to determine how much each job is worth in our company. So if you think about if you were hired by a company to come in and be their HR manager, one of the things that you might have to deal with, that you're going to have to deal with, is how much we pay our employees. And this is just going to show you one way of kind of thinking about how to come up with different salaries, different pay ranges for your job, the jobs in your company. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So this is the PDF file that you're going to see under your Files tab. I'm just going to scroll down to the first page, and you're going to want to read this, and it's going to talk about doing the different steps that you would go through to create a pay structure. And a pay structure is basically going to be each of the jobs in our company, or the jobs that we're looking at for this pay structure, laid out next to each other, each with its own pay range and with its own average pay for that job. And we'll get to that in just a few minutes. But kind of the first step is doing this job analysis, which if we scroll down, this is basically just a case on compensation. Now, what this is going to tell you is that you've been hired as the HR director for a new company in Tennessee, and they want to hire a number of positions to get this operation in Tennessee going. Okay, so you can see that they're going to hire all of these different jobs. They're going to hire multiples of some. They've hired you as the HR director, and they've got a number of different people to hire. So the first step that we've got to do is decide what all these jobs do. So if you think back to chapter 4, when we talked about job analysis and job design, we've got to know exactly what these jobs do. So the first step in general would be to create a job description and job specification. So that would include the duties and responsibilities of each of these jobs. And it would also include the skills and the knowledge needed by an individual who would successfully be able to do that job. Okay, so you might remember those things, job description and job specification from chapter 4. So that's kind of where we would start this process. Oh, and that's what task A is going to ask you to do. So if you were to scroll down to the PDF to the 5th page, I believe it would say task A, create a job description, benefits manager position using ONET, and it talks about kind of different ways to do that in here. But what I want you to do, we're going to be focusing on 5 jobs. It's the 5 jobs that have the star behind it in this table. The star is in front of them, but in this table. So 1, administrative assistant, front desk receptionist, operations analyst, benefits manager, and payroll assistant. Now, normally you would conduct, since we're focusing on those 5, you would conduct the job analysis for those 5 jobs. So you'd come up with a job description and a job specification. Now, for this assignment, I'm not going to ask you to do that. If we're doing this in real life, we would probably want to make sure we had those things pretty solid so that we can move forward. but I'm not going to ask you to do that for these jobs. The only thing that I would say about the job analysis part is if you have no idea what one of these jobs would do, for example, if you don't know what a benefits manager would do, then you could start by going to ONET. You could look up this job, this occupation, and then you could ultimately look at some of the duties and responsibilities of that job and what education they might have, what they might need to have experience with, those types of things. So do that if you're not familiar with what these positions do, or if you want to get to know them a little better. Now, where we're going to start this assignment is looking at these 5 jobs, and we're going to do job evaluations on these different jobs. Okay, so there's the job evaluation, as we talked about in chapter 11, is going to be focusing on the assigning points to, we're going to do the point method, which we talked about in chapter 11, and we're basically going to assign a number of points to each of these jobs, where points would increase as the job role becomes more important. So how do we come up with this point system? Well, this assignment has actually laid out how to come up with the point system for you and actually done one of the jobs for you. So you're going to want to read through this PDF so that you understand it more fully. I'm just giving you a summary. Okay, but you'll see here that they are going to use, this will tell you they'll use the point method for evaluating each job. And the factors they're going to use are skill, responsibility, and effort. And you can see here that that's broken down a little bit further, where responsibility has scope of control, impact of job, effort has degree of problem solving, and task complexity. So we're going to rate each of the jobs, the 5 jobs that we talked about, on these 6 areas. Okay? And we're going to rate each of these areas 1 to 4. Okay, so if we just look at education level, for example, and this template right here, they've actually done a job for you. So they've done the front, this is for the front desk receptionist. You go back, I'm going to scroll back up. If you look right here, remember we're going to do these 5 jobs: front desk receptionist, administrative assistant, operations analyst, payroll assistant, and benefits manager. Now, they've done the front desk receptionist for you. See, job evaluation for front desk receptionist. And this is how they've rated each of these areas for the front desk receptionist. So what you're going to do is have a table. You don't have to turn the table in, but you can, if you want, have a table for each of these 5 jobs. And you're going to come up with a different number of points for each job. And you can see they essentially just multiplied the degree by the weight and came up with a number of points. So 25 would be 25, 2 times 20 would be 40. You can see they did that for each area. And then if you added up all these points, that would be 50, another 40 would be 90, and another 20 would be, 50 would be 100, and then another 20 would be 120. So, how do we rate these factors? Well, just think about from a degree of 1 to 4, how you would rate each factor for each job. Okay, education level, let's just look at that. The education level necessary to be a front desk receptionist, if we use this scale up here, where 1 was a high school diploma, 2 was associate's, 3 was bachelor's, and 4 was graduate degree, you could probably rate that a 1 because we would expect that someone with a high school diploma could be a successful front desk receptionist. Now, if we go back up here and look at the operations analyst or the benefits manager, we might expect those individuals to have something more like a bachelor's degree or even a graduate degree for those jobs. A payroll assistant, for example, might be able to get away with an associate's or a bachelor's degree. Okay, so you would do that degree of technical skills. Again, you can look at responsibility, effort. You can look these jobs up on ONET. Just all right, so I've got a new tab here, and I can go to ONet. And if we click ONet Online, you can see that we can occupation quick search. You could do a payroll assistant, a payroll clerk. Actually, let's do this. Let's see if we can. Benefits. Okay, compensation and benefits managers. And you can see here a lot of information. This job, the task that they would do. You can see the type of work that they will do, abilities that they need. And one thing you can also do is up here, you can click these tabs to see what they would need. So a lot of people have a bachelor's degree for this job, and some have a master's or some type of post-bachelor certification. So this could be a bachelor's degree and a professional of human resources certification. So you can see that there's a fairly high level of education needed to do this job. So going back to here, you could see education level for the benefits manager would probably be more along the lines of 3 or 4. Put a 3 or 4 there, multiply that by 25, and you come to 100 points. Okay, so ultimately what you will have, if we're looking at my Excel sheet, is a little table just like this. Just look at this part for now. But we're looking at the 5 jobs that I talked about and the evaluation points. You can see the job 1 was what I called a front desk receptionist. I called that job 1. And that's the 120 points they came up with. And then I came up with my own points for each of these. Okay? Now, you're going to come up with your own points for each of these, for each job. So they did 1 for you, and you're going to come up with the other 4. Now, your number should not exactly match up with mine because you're going to have a different tables over here to come up with it than I did. But ultimately, you're going to have a series of points that should range from a low to high as the job becomes requires more effort and responsibility and skills. Okay. Now, the next step of this assignment, once you've got those, actually task B is calculating those evaluation points, which are over here we just talked about for each job. So read through that. I'll tell you about coming up with that. The next task is to C and really D. Scroll down to D. D's the regression. So for C, what you're going to do is you're actually not worried about outliers, what you would recommend doing. What you're really worried about is calculating weighted means for each of these jobs. Okay. So essentially what this company has done, this hypothetical company has, what you've done is you've done what we call a salary survey. So you've asked other companies that have these same type of jobs, you've asked them, hey, what do you pay your employees? Okay. So you've asked them to anonymously provide information about what they pay their front desk receptionists. So we need to come up with a weighted mean across these other companies that we've surveyed to help us determine what do we think we should pay our employees. Okay, so we want to know, to inform our decision of how to pay our employees, we want the weighted average of what other companies are paying them. All a weighted average means is we want to know, we're going to weight each company by how many, we're going to we're going to rate, okay, I can't speak English this morning. We're going to weight each company by the number of employees that they have and include that salary information. You can see here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 companies, and a total of 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1 for a total of 9 positions. So we don't want to weight every company the same because obviously some companies have more positions than others. One way to do this is to come up with a somewhat complex little formula to multiply the average salary for each company by the number of employees that they represent of the whole. That gets a little bit complicated, so I'm going to show you a little bit easier way to do that. Easier way to do this is right here. What you can see that I've done, let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, right here, you see that table. What I've done is I've listed all the salaries for every one of these positions. So this table over here on page 8 of your PDF file has 9 salaries. We just talked about those 9 over here. All I did was list those 9 over here. Now, how do I know what each person makes? Well, I have the averages and I have the number of employees. So you can see I've got one person making $21,000 right there. Right there. I've got 2 people from company 2 making $22,000 on average right there. One person making 18, company 3 right there. 2 people making 21 from company 4 right there. And I have 2 people on average making 18,500, company 5, and 1 person making 17,500. So this tells me what people are being paid for the front desk receptionist job in my industry from other companies. Okay, so what I've done is I've created a weighted average. So now, since I actually listed each one of these out, I actually just average them. You can see right down here, the average Excel is automatically calculating is $19,944. I put that in my little table right here, weighted average, 19,994. You can see what I did for that number was I actually put in a formula where I told Excel, just give me the average. I can put equals average, and then in parentheses, the sales that I wanted to reference. So if I delete that, all I'm going to tell Excel is equals the average and reference the sales. So select the sales that I want to average and close the parentheses. And there you go. There's your weighted average. Now, in your PDF, you've got 5 tables like this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see that that's for the 5 different jobs. Now, what I've already done in my file here is I've showed that I just listed out the 5 different jobs and each of their salaries on average that were provided by each company. Same exact thing that I just walked through with you on that first job. I did it for all 5 jobs, for the front desk receptionist, the administrative assistant, the payroll assistant, the operations analyst, and the benefits manager. Now, I also, same thing here, I referenced each sale, each set of sales that I wanted in my Excel document to come up with that weighted average. And what you can see is you can see how much the other companies in my industry are paying these positions on average. And as these positions get paid a little more, you can see that kind of matches up with the point system that I came up with. So whenever you get your weighted averages, you should start to realize, you should make sure that your points match up with your averages. So jobs that get paid more on average should have more points. Okay, so that will be task C. And task D is going to ask you to run a simple regression in Excel to kind of figure out what the market's paying people. So we're trying to come up with a formula of how we figure out what we want to pay people based on these points. Okay, now. Simple regression. That sounds like some intense statistical talk, right? It is statistics, but it's pretty simple, and I'm going to keep it pretty simple for you. In its most basic sense, You probably remember a regression, seeing it somewhere as y equals mx plus b, right? So y is something we're trying to predict. In this case, we're trying to predict what people make. We want to know what we're paying people. And we want to do that based on some x, which in this case is our points, because we want to say our point system predicts what you make in our company. Okay? And this is the slope associated with x and the intercept. And so if you remember, regression is simply just a line, and it ends up literally just looking like that. And so you have x, y, and you have some line like that, right? It's just a line. And we're just trying to decide how to come up with that line, and there's the formula. Now, we don't want to do this by hand because we're lazy, or maybe it's just smarter to do it by hand, by computer, right? We have a machine to do it. Why not use our machine? So it's a lot smarter to let this thing do it without us having to calculate all this by hand. Now, to do that, how do we do that in Excel? Well, the first thing that you're going to need to do is go to File. If you've never done this before, you're going to need to go to File, Options, and you're going to want to go to Add-ins, and then you're going to want to click Analysis Toolpath, and you're going to want to click Go. This little dialog box is going to pop up. You're just going to pick this first one. It should already be selected. Press OK. Now what you will see when you click your Data tab, you're going to have a new little button right here called Data Analysis. What we're going to do is we're going to go to Data Analysis, and we're going to click Regression. Okay, now it's going to ask you where is Y and where is X. Now, what I recommend you doing is setting up a little table just like I have right here. Because in Excel, the regression, the numbers need to be right next to each other. Make things easier and make them work. So it's asking me what my Y is. What is Y? Y is what we're trying to predict, which in our case is salary, right? Then it's going to ask me where my X's are. And now I'm going to tell them X is what's predicting salary, and we want to use our point system to predict what you make. And then I'm going to press OK. And Excel is going to automatically put this on a separate sheet. You're going to have to widen these out a little bit. Okay, so you can see them. It's going to give you a whole bunch of numbers. Now, there's only a few of these numbers that we're really going to care about. I'm going to go back to sheet 1 because I've already copied this over for you. All right, so here's our regression output. All of this stuff. All I want you to care about right now is a couple numbers. You're going to care about these two numbers, and you're going to care about this number. And that's really it for right now. Okay. So you run your regression. Now you want your PDF. If you look back at the PDF, it says identify the slope and the y-intercept and write the equation for the market pay line. Okay. How do we write the equation? I've already done that in my example, and it's right here. Now, what is that based on? Remember, we said regression was just y, salary, equals mx plus b. So some intercept, the slope associated with x, and the x, which is points. So there's my little formula. I've already written it out. Where did those numbers come from? We look back at our regression formula. A little more. Okay, we look back at our regression output. Here we go. The slope associated with x is listed right there by x variable 1, 357.42, and then the intercept is the b. So we have to add in a negative 23,699.88 or minus 23,699.88. Okay. Now, this next task E, asks you, what is your R squared? R squared in statistics just means how much variation in y in your dependent variable y, whatever you're trying to predict, which in our case is what? Salary, right? We're trying to predict salary. how much of the variation did you actually predict using your X? So we want to know this number varies. Y varies. There's different numbers here. We want to know how much of that difference in each of these numbers could we predict by using these. And R squared is always a percentage. R squared is a percentage, and it's this number right here. So if we make that a percentage, we got 97% for R squared. That means that we explained 97% of the variation in salary using job evaluation. The most we can explain is 100, the least we can explain is 0. That means that we did a very, very good job. When you do this, your number should be upward of 90 whenever you even though you won't have the same points that I have, you should come up with a number close to 90. Close to 90 or above that, actually. Okay. Now, the next task says, task F, calculate the predicted base pay for each benchmark job. So, how do we predict salary? Well, we have our formula now. All we have to do is plug in our numbers, right? We have this number, 357.42, times the amount of points for each job minus this number, which is our intercept. And you can see I've got our predicted salaries for each job right there. Now, if we look a little closer, we can see how I came up with these numbers. Double click, and you can see all I did was insert this formula. I have equals 357.42 multiplied by the points. So I reference the cell J2, which is the points for job 1, right back up here, minus the intercept. Okay, we press enter, and there's our number. So that's our predicted base pay. Now, if you do this in a table set up similar to what I've done, you only have to do this one time, because then all you have to do is drag this down by the corner, and I get my numbers back. And it'll do it automatically for me, because all it's going to tell Excel to do is grab the next cell down from J2, which is now J3, which is perfect because I want to reference the job points for job 2. There we go. So what is this doing? What is this table doing? Well, this table is saying, based on your point system, this is what you should, and the salary information that we gained from all those companies, this is what we should pay each of our 5 jobs on average. Okay. The next step says, in task G says, your company wants to actually pay better than average. So we want to look at what everybody else is paying. We want to pay 3% better than that. So that's an incentive for people to work here, right? We want to pay a little more. So how do we do that in Excel? Well, all we have to do is take these numbers and add 3% to them, which is what I've done right here. Okay. So if we look a little closer, all I did was 1.03, which means this number plus 3%, 1.03, so 103% of J27, which is this cell right here. So again, if you do it in the table format like I've done it here, you actually can just do it once and drag the corner. And you can see same numbers come back, and all it's doing is telling it reference this cell, 1 down, 1.03 times that number. Same thing here, 1 down times 1.03. So now these numbers here, these numbers show me this is what, because we want to lead the average by 3%, this is actually what we're going to pay each of those people. So what does that mean? That means that on average, when we hire a front desk receptionist, we want to pay them $19,700. On average, when we hire a benefits manager, we want to pay them $65,784 a year. Okay. Now, the next thing it says to do, task H, is create pay grades by combining any jobs that are substantially comparable. Okay, so we're going to think about a few different things. We've got 5 jobs right here. Let me actually highlight all of this. we've got 5 jobs right here, and we've got 5 predicted salaries, okay? For our purpose, we want to know which of these are substantially comparable. We go back and look at the jobs. Here's your PDF. Go back up. We're looking at these 5 jobs. Administrative assistant, front desk receptionist, operations analyst, benefits manager, payroll assistant. Okay, so think about these jobs. Think about the duties and the education involved in each of these jobs. And we look at the salary information. We know we're going to pay people. A couple of these jobs are somewhat comparable. For example, the administrative assistant and the payroll assistant, I consider those somewhat comparable. They're both administrative positions. Okay, they're administrative assistant positions where one's just a little more specialized than the other. Their duties are going to be somewhat similar, and the education level involved and the responsibility involved is going to be somewhat similar. So I'm going to argue, and since their pay is not too far off, I'm going to argue I could probably combine these 2 jobs into one pay grade. And then I did the same thing with jobs 4 and 5. Now, you might have rationale that says, I don't think I can combine those jobs. I don't think payroll assistant and administrative assistant are similar categories, and here's why. For my example, I combined 4 and 5. I combined 2 and 3. Why would I do that? It makes it a little bit easier to keep up with. Imagine if we have 100 different, or let's just say we have 30 different jobs in our company, and we've got a number of people working in each job. We don't want to have 30 different pay grades because that gets a little hard to manage. So if we can combine these, we can save ourselves some time and trouble. And it also allows us to come up with a pay grade for multiple jobs, and that gives us leeway in paying people more or less money in that job. So if we have people that are really good performers, they can make a little more because they're in job category that we've set for multiple jobs. So all I did was I combined the pay grades into pay grades A, B, and C. I have job 1 by itself, 2 and 3, and then 4 and 5. And then we scroll back down. We can see we have to create pay grades by combining those jobs for task age. So we've also got to create the pay grade average. So all I did was this is just referencing that first cell where I have the predicted pay, because that job is by itself. And then this cell is just taking the average of these 2 predicted pays because we've combined them. And then if we go 1 cell down, I've taken the average of these 2 cells because we want to combine these jobs and have some predicted salary plus 3%. So now we've got the average pay grades for each, the average pay for each pay grade where we have placed our jobs. Now, the last 2 things you're going to do are create the pay grade ranges. So this PDF is going to tell you the final step, create a range, because remember, we have an average over here, but we have to have some range where people can make, so a minimum and maximum for a position, because we can't just pay everybody the average forever, right? We've got to give people raises, and some people are going to make more than others because they're more qualified, things like that. So we're going to create ranges. And what this PDF is going to tell you to do is to create a pay range using 10 and 30% as the cut points. And what you're going to do is, what I did to make this simple is, for clerical and office positions, we're using 10%. I said that the first 2 job categories were clerical and office, since it's administrative assistants and front desk receptionists. And then I said the last job category, category C, is mid-level professional and management position. I use 30% for that one. Now, how do I come up with the ranges? I need 10% above and below the averages for these 2, and then 30% above and below the average for that one. So you can see here, to come up with this, all I did was reference the average, multiply it by 90%. That gives me 10% below and then I wanted 10% above, so I multiplied it by 1.1. I did the same thing with this category there. And then I used 30% here, so I multiplied the average 70%, and then by and then by 1.3% to get 30% above the average. And there's my pay grade ranges. And then finally, all Test J is going to ask you to do is ask you, does it make sense? Does it work well? What does this mean for retention and recruiting? So you just can type in some answers to those questions. And you can see here, I even did a little graph just to kind of show the averages by grade to show how each pay grade makes a little bit more than the last one. And what this does is this kind of helps you defend the pay decisions made in your company. Pay is a very serious issue. People take pay very seriously. And if people start finding out they get paid less than other people or more than other people, they might want to know why. And this is a way to defend your pay decisions. Come up with a reasonable way to pay people based on market information. So then you can tell people, well, look, we have come up with a point system for our jobs. Your position based on this system is worth this many points. And using our formula, our formula then is used to predict the salary that job makes and the range that job falls within. That's why we've made those decisions regarding your pay. Okay, so that's just a little exercise just to show you how to make pay decisions using market information and being a pay leader, how you adjust your pay and coming up with those ranges. Okay, and so if you have any questions about that, just let me know. You can upload your Excel document. I'll create an assignment. You'll upload your Excel document there, and for those of you that do that, you will be receiving 4 bonus points for your grade. All right, have a great week.